The anime begins 2 years ago with our protagonist named Tachibana Junichi, who was happy because finally a girl had agreed to go out with him, but on their first date he gets stood up. So he loses faith in love, and now in the present he has strange habits like locking himself in the closet, thinking why she didn't go on their date. His sister, named Mia, has to go to take him out as they are running late, so they go to school together, and since they have an agreement not to treat each other so closely outside the house, Mia goes with her friend and he meets his best friend named Umehara. They see the most popular girl in the school named Haruka, who has a reputation for rejecting everyone who confesses their crush. Then, at school, they also meet Ayatsuji, who is the one who likes to do the things that no one else likes, so she accepts all kinds of responsibilities in class. We have Kaoru, who is also a friend of the main character since high school. They play a game of rock, paper, scissors to see who will go to the cafeteria for food, and the protagonist is the one who ends up going. He sees a first grader who seems to have trouble getting into the crowd, so the protagonist tells her that he can help her and buys her food. This catches Haruka's attention as he seems like a very nice person for doing this, which leaves the protagonist on cloud 9 as he never imagined he will be able to talk to her. After school, the main character looks for Umehara, and in the library they meet again with Haruka, who asks him to carry the books for her. Until her friend Ibiki finds them and frees the main character from the exploitation he was having. He is once again on cloud 9 as she tells him that he is very kind and thinks that she can fall in love with him. Days go by and Junichi loses hope because Haruka is unreachable. Suddenly, she appears and writes the protagonist as she thought it was fun to do it out of nostalgia for when they were little. They met Mia and Junichi introduces themselves, but Mia is not very interested in being friends with her. He asks her why she was so rude to Haruka, but she gets upset because she just wanted to get along better with her. After a while, the protagonist sees Haruka alone and goes up to her to talk. She asks him as a joke if he likes her. The protagonist gets up the courage to confess his feelings, but Haruka rejects him in a very kind way, saying thank you, but she likes older guys. So the protagonist returns home feeling down and locks himself in the closet again. The next day, he downs with a dead face because he didn't sleep at all, so he goes to the nurse's office and there he meets Haruka, who hadn't slept well either, because she watched her series all night long. Haruka talks to him as if nothing was wrong, even though she apologizes. Junichi tells her not to worry because he thinks it's better and doesn't want things to change, but instead asks her what kind of guy she likes. Haruka tells him that she prefers someone that is strong and masculine, but also cute. Then Junichi is motivated again, as now he could become what she wants, and for this he decides to be a boxer, because this matches everything Haruka asks for. In the gym, she asks if she can join, but Hibiki stops her and they change to leave. Then Haruka takes advantage of the fact that they are there to go home together. The protagonist and Umehara think that they are in a dream and start talking about the reasons why they think Haruka is so famous, but she listens to them, so they start talking about the people she had rejected. They feel sorry for those, since they won't get another chance because confessing twice is pointless. This conversation again depresses him, who was like dead the next day, until Haruka shows up and the protagonist goes back to acting normal. Mia runs out and Junichi goes to ask her why she is so rude. Mia tells him that it bothers her that he ignores her, and when Haruka arrives his attitude suddenly changes, so she throws water on him to punish him for being such a bad brother. He keeps thinking about the mood swings he has for Haruka. Suddenly, there is an all-out war in the classroom and the teacher punishes them for not respecting the class. Kaoru had to go to work, so he has to do all the work alone. Haruka shows up because she wanted to try on a swimsuit, so she drags the main character to the pool and asks one of the girls for her swimsuit. He stands here because the other girls of the swimming club think he is a stalker, but Haruka comes back to tell them that he is coming with her. Haruka wanted to go into the pool, but Hibiki was attentive and scolds her for wanting to do what she wants. She gets upset because of how strict she is. Then, the protagonist tells her to go to the library to look for books with pictures of cute animals to relax, and he agrees to find her a book she likes. Luckily, Haruka likes the idea, but she falls asleep while waiting for the protagonist, so he stays watching her sleep. After a while, she wakes up and sees that the protagonist got the books he told her about, but he confesses his feelings again and Haruka is surprised because she didn't expect him to say it again. Then Junichi promises not to say it again if it bothers her, but Haruka says he doesn't. He says he will tell her his feelings until she gives him an answer. So she gets very embarrassed as she can't say no to him seeing how hard he tries. Then she gives him a kiss as he looks cute when he is so serious. After that, he feels really motivated in everything he does, which attracts the attention of the teacher. So she asks him if it is for love. He is really surprised that she realized it, but Kaoru arrives with her friend named Tanaka, who starts to bother the protagonist for finding his soulmate. Haruka sees this and gets upset, so she drags the protagonist away from that place and asks him what he was doing with those girls. So he is surprised because he didn't think she could be jealous of him. Then he tells her that he was just talking about how happy he is to have met her. Haruka comes down and the protagonist asks if she can kiss him on the forehead again, but she says it will be better if he kisses her. On one condition, which is that he takes her to a place where no one can see them. Junichi thinks carefully about where they could go and comes up with the perfect place. So he takes her through the whole school and then they go out to an abandoned shed. She tells him he can kiss her anywhere but on the mouth. The protagonist thinks that he wanted to kiss her behind the knee, as if he were a puppy, and then convinces Haruka that it is a good place, so he gives her a kiss and after that he can't stop and even tries to go up a little bit. So Haruka stops him since this place is still forbidden for him. Although she confesses that she really liked that he kissed her in that place. Because of this, the protagonist gets really happy and to top it all off, he constantly asks Haruka that he wants to kiss her again. So she explodes and asks Hibiki for advice on what to do. So that she doesn't suspect that she was talking about Junichi, she tells her that it's a dog. But this lie falls apart in seconds since she knows her pretty well. Then she tells her that if she wants to do that, she doesn't have to hold back since it's normal for a guy who likes her to want to spoil her. The next day, Haruka jumps on the main character in surprise and realizes that she thinks he's cute. So they go to eat something, but Haruka was bored with the usual menu, so the main character decides to do something more exciting. So they serve him ramen, which is probably the least exciting. But Junichi puts in a fictional context to make it more exciting. She likes this idea, so she goes along with it and pretends to be a kidnapped girl who hasn't eaten for days. So she begs him to feed her right in her mouth, and the protagonist has to give her the food. Everyone starts to look at them as they look like a very mellow couple, but Hibiki leaves them alone as two people in love shouldn't be disturbed. The next day, he accepts Miya's invitation to go shopping, even though they only wanted to use him as a donkey. To his surprise, he finds Haruka in the game zone, so he leaves all her things to Miya and goes with Haruka. She is surprised that the main character is around, but takes advantage of the fact that they met to play for a while. Junichi is aware that he has to ask her out on Christmas Eve, but first he invites her for a walk in a park, and then takes her to the place where they met. Haruka doesn't know what he's talking about, but she remembers that she talked to a guy who helped her to get over the death of her dog. So she's surprised that he's actually that guy. He tells her that he was in that park because that's where he was stood up. Then he thanks her for showing him that he could feel happiness even though that happened, but now it was all over and proceeds to ask her out on Christmas Eve. Haruka tells him that she can't because she has plans with her family, but she will have no problem spending the holidays with him if he agrees to go to the meeting together. And of course, the protagonist doesn't hesitate for a second to say yes. Christmas Eve arrives and Junichi hurries in because he's late. Haruka tells him to take a bath because he can't show up all sweaty. He is surprised because his first time entering a hotel with a woman will be with Haruka. They actually go into the hotel pool. However, he feels just lucky because he will be able to see Haruka in a swimsuit. And she doesn't disappoint his expectations because he thinks she's super cute in a bikini. After playing a lot in the pool, Haruka notices that the meeting time has passed. So he asks her where they have to meet, and when he finds out that it is on the top floor of the hotel, he grabs Haruka by the hand and runs away. But she tells him that he doesn't have to hurry because his grandparents' flight is delayed for a day, so there was no one waiting for them, and since she didn't want the room to be wasted, she decided to spend the night there. She realizes how nice the room is, so she takes the chance to take a shower, and told the protagonist not to spy on her. He gives his promise, but the light goes out and Haruka gets upset because she doesn't understand why the main character didn't try to see her while she was taking a shower. Because she feels that maybe he doesn't like her enough, because she has never been in love with someone before, and that's why she has all these insecurities. He apologizes and makes it clear how much he likes her just the way she is. So he asks her not to cry, then Haruka accepts only if he calls her by her name, and then asks him to give her a kiss. They could spend a happy Christmas Eve and then live a happy life as a couple, and even 10 years later, Ibiki usually goes to see them to be surprised of how much in love they are. We start Kaoru's route. In another scenario, he meets Kaoru while he is returning from being stood up on his date 2 years ago. Then, seeing him so sad, she invites him to spend Christmas Eve at her house. They become best friends, who are together all the time. Kaoru plays practical jokes on him, like beating his ear in front of everyone. Umehara arrives and they start talking as usual, but class was about to start, so Yatsuji tells them to calm down. The protagonist supports her, so Kaoru gets upset and ends up knocking the protagonist down, and gives him a punch that causes him to faint. She tries to make him believe that he fainted out of a student. Obviously, that lie doesn't last, even though the protagonist can't be upset to see that Kaoru was really worried about him. She asks him to go to the back of the school after class. Hunichi starts to think about what she might be calling him for and thinks that maybe she is going to confess. When he arrives, he is very disappointed because Kaoru was not alone and only wanted him as a love concealer for her friend Tanaka. Then Hunichi advises her to be direct and asks him to be clear about his feelings in a letter, or something like that. So Kaoru is surprised at how incredibly reliable he is in these cases. Then they walk back together and Kaoru starts telling him about how embarrassing her job is sometimes. Then the protagonist tells her that maybe he's going to see her someday. Hunichi tells her that at some point he thought she was going to confess, so he feels a little silly since this will be impossible. But this bothers Kaoru, who leaves without giving any explanation. He doesn't understand why, so he advances his visit and enters as a customer. But as he hasn't much money, he can only ask for a cup of coffee, although he can help seeing her from head to toe in her work uniform. Kaoru gets nervous every time she sees the main character and makes mistakes she wouldn't normally make, so she starts to think that maybe it's all because of him, which doesn't please her. Later, she thinks that maybe she feels something more than friendship for him, but she discards this idea with fun because she finds it ridiculous. The next day, she was about to get into a fight with one of the boys in the classroom. Then, he separates them and asks what happened to bring them to this point. Hunichi goes to Kaoru to ask her version of events, and it turns out that the boys had made fun of Tanaka's letter, since the boy she likes had made fun of her, and no matter how hard she tried to keep calm, she couldn't do it, seeing that he despised something she did with so much love. She wasn't worried, as she feels that they won't play with Tanaka's feelings so easily now. The protagonist takes advantage of the love conversation to ask her if she likes someone, but is surprised to hear that she does. Kaoru asks him if he has someone special, but the protagonist didn't have anyone like that, so they each get a little disappointed. However, he doesn't think it's bad for them to stay as good friends. Kaoru doesn't think the same and takes the initiative and grabs him to bring his face closer, and ends up giving him a kiss. Even though it was their first kiss, Kaoru tells him that it's not worth it because she didn't really want to kiss him and it was just an accident. That's why Hunichi gets upset and plans to take his revenge, so he tells Kaoru to go to the library. When she arrives, he takes her where no one was and tells her that he will make her pay with sickles. He gets an idea, so he tells her that as punishment he will give her a kiss on her belly button. And to his surprise, Kaoru doesn't put much resistance. Hunichi does it and Kaoru ducks him so he can take his revenge, but the protagonist didn't expect a girl's skin to be so soft, so he can't help but get excited and lick more than he should. Kaoru gets even more ticklish and ends up choking him for going too far. She was happy because it was a whole new experience, and since she still had a little time before going to work, she tells him to go for a walk in the park for a while. There they see some kids wanting to recover their ball that got stuck in a tree, so Kaoru goes to the rescue, and to reach it, she uses the protagonist as a chair and jumps over the tree, demonstrating her geniality to the kids. Kaoru has to leave because it is getting late, so she promises that they will come another day with more time. On the way to work, Kaoru finds her mother, but before she can say anything to her, she leaves with an unknown man, so she is shocked to the point of crying. The next day, Kaoru doesn't show up, and he thinks that maybe it's because of everything they did in the library, so he can't concentrate in class, and to make matters worse, Tanaka doesn't know where she is, so she goes out to look for her all over the school during recess. However, after a while, Tanaka tells him that the teacher called her house because she missed her excuse and was told that she hadn't come home since last night. He can't bear to stay at school, so he decides to run away to go look for her and goes to all the places they visited together. And he realizes that they had been through a lot in the past few years. Meanwhile, Kaoru was crying on the beach and the children she helped saw her, so they scolded the main character when they saw him because they thought he was a bad man for making her cry. Hunichi goes running to the beach where the children saw her, but she was already gone, so he goes to the last place he can think of, which is Kaoru's work. Fortunately, she was there. Although the protagonist doesn't have much money, he tries to get her attention from the window. Kaoru notices and goes out to talk to him during her break. Then Junichi asks her why she didn't come home and miss school, and Kaoru explains that she saw her mother with a man she doesn't know and doesn't understand why she is looking for support from a stranger if she tries so hard to work and help at home to show that they can do it alone. Junichi tries to say something, but Kaoru continues to vent, making it clear that she didn't want a new father and bursts into tears. Kaoru turns away so he doesn't see her, and he tries to tell her that it's okay to cry, but she sends him away since she really doesn't want him to see her moment of weakness. Junichi tells her that she is not weak for crying, since it only shows how much she cares about the memories she has of her father. Then she accepts that she is making too much drama over nothing, since her mother is not going to forget her father by telling someone else, so she calls her mom and she is very happy to hear that she is okay. Junichi buys her a seasonal candy that are her favorite. In the evening, he starts thinking about his feelings so far since he sees her as a high school friend, but he can't deny that she attracts his attention as something else. The next day, everyone knows that between Kaoru and the protagonist there must be something else because he ran away when he found out that Kaoru had not returned home, so Umehara and Tanaka decide to make a plan to get them together. Umehara pretends to cut his finger and sends the protagonist for a band-aid, but in the nurse's office was Kaoru in her work uniform because Tanaka was fixing her skirt. So now they are alone. Junichi asks her if she has something to do for Christmas, and Kaoru says yes, since she will go out with him. She invited herself alone when she saw that Junichi didn't ask her. So he is relieved since he thought she had other plans. Finally, Christmas Eve arrives, and Kaoru keeps thinking about what to wear. So Junichi waits, and for a second he thinks that they will leave him again. Then he scolds Kaoru for giving him a worry, but she tells him that she will never do that. She wants to climb the harbor tower, but the protagonist gets dizzy, so they walk around talking about life and anecdotes from high school. Anyway, Kaoru wants to climb the tower, so she starts dragging the protagonist who almost dies, but has to act as if he is not afraid of heights. Kaoru gives him the final test, which is to stand on a transparent floor, and the protagonist panics as soon as he enters, so Kaoru grabs him by the hands to make him feel safe. They stay there for a while, and it starts to snow. Then they each get lost with words, and she tells him that she always wants to be with him and appreciates all his bad and good things, since she likes him. Junichi does the same and also confesses his feeling, so they give each other a Christmas kiss. After so much talk, it gets really late, and the buses don't run to Kaoru's house. Then the protagonist tells her to sleep at his place because he won't let her sleep anywhere. So Kaoru enters quietly since Miya was at home. Kaoru is surprised by how tidy his room is, but she makes a lot of noise, so Mila goes in to see what they were doing. But when she sees that no one was there, she deduces that it was just high-end videos playing. Bedtime comes and Kaoru doesn't want to sleep on the floor, so she gets into bed with him, who is very nervous and turns to see if she is already asleep. But Kaoru is setting a trap for him, because as soon as she sees that he wants to see her asleep, he rides him and kisses him. Although actually, she was feeling very tired, so she falls asleep. After this, they manage to have a long and beautiful relationship. In another possible scenario, the protagonist sees Sae, a new student who catches his attention. One day, Umehara convinces the protagonist to buy his lunch, so he goes to the dining hall and crashes with Haruka, and drops his purse. Sae sees this and runs him all over the school to get him to give it to him. He tries to talk to her for a while, but Sae gets nervous and leaves. Junichi comes back thoughtful and without food since he was running late, but he can be calm without thanking Sae properly for returning his purse, so he goes to ask Miya if she knows her. And by coincidence of life, it is like that. Then she introduces them, and the protagonist manages to thank her properly. Later, Sia can cross the street, so he goes to see, and it turns out that there is a dog that scares her. He imagines a giant dog, but it turns out to be a puppy. Anyway, Sae runs away as if her life depended on it. Then they stop by a restaurant to rest, and Sae is amazed at how nice the uniforms are there. He realizes that she wants to work, but she tells him that she has never worked, so she doesn't know what to do. So Junichi asks Kaoru, and she tells him that he only has to pass an interview where you are evaluated to see if you are fit to talk to customers and bring food to the table. He knows that the part of talking to clients can be complicated for her, so he starts practice sessions. Junichi will be the instructor and Mila will be the client. Then they teach her how to speak loudly, but no matter how hard she tries and tries, she can't speak with acceptable strength. The protagonist grabs her stomach to see how she is breathing, but because of nerves, he forgets to breathe and faints. Then they switch to the training of bringing coffee to the table, but Sae ends up spilling the coffee on his pants and Junichi has to take it off. To his bad luck, Mia comes in to see how they are doing and misunderstands the situation. Then they explain to her what really happened and walk back to Sae. Then Mia had the great idea of playing rock, paper, scissors and the one who loses has to carry the winner. Junichi loses, so Sae climbs on top of him. The protagonist didn't want to waste time, so he makes her keep practicing on top of him, and this was the beginning of a great friendship. After 3 weeks, Sae managed to have fluent conversations, although only with the expanded machines. And Kaoru sees that they have a long way to go. But this, for the protagonist, was already a success in her training. He thinks it's time to move on to the next level and tells her to go ask the food lady for something, but she gets very nervous and doesn't get a single word out. He advises her to imagine them as talking expanded machines, and as strange as it sounds, this works in the end. Sae managed to strike up a small, fluent conversation, for which the protagonist is happy. After class, he continues the training in the chemistry room, since Mia didn't want them to be at home after the coffee thing. Then he tells Sae to do a quick change exercise, since according to his experience in jobs, she might need these skills in real life. Sae changes from gym clothes to a swimsuit in record time, but in her hurry she slips on Junichi, and to make matters worse, Mia enters at the worst possible moment and misunderstands the situation again. On the weekend, they are in the baths to train, but he can't help but be attracted to Sae's swimsuit since Mia gave her the real tips based on his secret magazine. There is a very particular foot wash because they use fish to clean the dead skin, and as soon as they put their feet in, they start tickling them. Junichi starts the interview in extreme situations, but he gets too excited when he hears Sae's screams, so he ends up fainting again. On their way back, Sae wanted to continue training, so they go to Junichi's house, but they spend their time playing Monopoly, and it's getting late, so Mia has the wonderful idea of asking Sae to sleep over, and fortunately, Sae's father accepts. Then they both take a shower while the protagonist listens in from the outside. Sae comes out in Mia's pajamas and he is surprised that she looks so good in them, so he wishes he was his little sister. But Sae gets upset because she wouldn't want to be his little sister. The next day, he continues training them as usual, from bright and early, but then gets thoughtful, and here he doesn't know what Sae means by saying she didn't want to be his little sister. His friend is surprised he doesn't get it, and even Haruka tells him it's pretty obvious, but tells him she surely wants to be his big sister or his mother, so the protagonist is even more confused. After school, Sae has her job interview, so she asks Junichi to go with her as she is very grateful for all his support. Obviously, he says yes and waits while he is interviewed. Happily, Sae passes the interview. She knew she still had a lot to learn, so she asked him to continue with the training. After a few days, they go to visit her at work, and Kaoru is surprised how nice the uniforms are, so they understand why they had been losing customers lately. On the weekend, Sae invites the protagonist to the adventure park, and as he doesn't like aids, they go to quieter rides like the carousels or the hero's play, where they confuse Sae with an elementary school girl and include her in the play, which was very funny to the protagonist. Then Sae realizes that they might think they are a couple, so she gets quite nervous, but she musters up the courage to ask him to join her in the couples contest at the festival, and he gladly accepts. After a couple of attempts of Sae trying to ask him to hold her hand, he realizes what she wants, so he takes the initiative and takes her hand by surprise. Junichi starts to think seriously about the fact that he likes Sae, and they go on other dates again, so he realizes that Sae has very refined tastes compared to him. They go to that place because he heard that they had a planned parfait, and if they managed to eat it as a couple, their love would last forever. He asked for it to share because it was giant, and seeing how hard she tries to eat it, the protagonist is motivated to be the best couple. Then they go to the couples contest because they look pretty good together. There are though opponents like Haruka, but the protagonist with Sae look like a newly married couple, so they impressed everyone. After the speeches, they give the winners, and unfortunately, they don't win. Anyway, Sae feels very fortunate to have gotten this second place, and believes that it is all thanks to the protagonist, although he knew it was because of Sae's beauty. As a prize, they are giving a ticket to the movies in a private theater, so they go the next day. The movie is about love and has a lot of prestige because they say that the director and the protagonist were lovers, so they managed to capture the theme of love very well. After the movie, Junichi wanted to capture Sae's beauty just as the movie captured that of the actress, but because they were playing, they ended up on top of each other. Sae starts to cry with happiness for all the time they spent together, so the protagonist embraces her because he is also very happy. He gets the courage to confess his feeling and they kiss. Then they go to spend Christmas Eve in front of the tree and under the snow, so they create a very nice relationship that lasts for a long time, and the protagonist continues to record the beauty of Sae in front of the camera at every moment. Another possibility is that Junichi meets a girl named Ai while returning from his failed date. It happens too fast, so he forgets all about it. Returning home from school with his friends, he feels like going to the bathroom, so he goes to a park to see if they can find a safe place. But here, he meets Ai, who jumps off a swing, so they stare at the bottom of her skirt. Ai accuses them and jokes that she will report them to the police and says that in a very convincing way, but in the end he tells them that it was just a joke. The next day, Kaoru greets him with a slap on the butt, but he gets upset and decides to return the greeting. Then Kaoru runs away shouting that he is a harasser, so Miya stops her to avoid any more scandal. However, he realizes that Ai was watching him and his reputation fell even lower. He kept bumping into Ai, making a fool of himself, since at lunch he can't decide what to order and hurries him. He then goes to chase a kid into the pool and here he meets Ai again. She thinks he is spying on the girls coming down to see under their skirts. He gets nervous and tries to explain what is going on, but she doesn't believe him. Then says she will give him what he is looking for and lifts up her skirt. Junichi covers his eyes, but she insists. Then he sees she is wearing her swimsuit under her uniform. What catches the protagonist's attention is that she knows that he is Miya's brother, because she deduces it from his name. So she tells him to behave because she doesn't want her friend's brother to be caught by the police. Miya asks Junichi what he did to Ai since she went to ask her what kind of person he was, but he doesn't pay much attention to her since he was reading his manga. Miya asks him to keep the tickets if he buys something at the mall since she wanted to win the Hawaii trip. But he doesn't pay attention to her, so she grades it on his face. The next day he realizes why they laughed when they saw him. She stops him to ask him if he was free in the afternoon since she wanted to take advantage of the offers at the mall, and it serves her that the protagonist carries things. As a reward, he doesn't win the Hawaii prize, but at least he gets 500 yen, so he decides to use it to buy something for the two of them. Anyway, I accept, so they buy a couple of sweets and go to the beach to eat. The girl starts talking about everything she does after school and he is surprised because compared to that girl he does nothing. Then he picks up a bottle that was lying around and realizes that there was a lot of garbage on the coast, so he starts cleaning it up. The next day he gets some information that there is a new assistant in the library who is quite pretty, so they go there to confirm the information. But there were so many people that it covers up the view. And to their good luck, Ai passes by, so they ask her if she was pretty and managed to corroborate the information. Junichi realizes that she has a math book, so Ai confesses that she is not doing very well and has to study to avoid taking extra classes, as this will prevent her from being able to continue in the club. Junichi then offers to help her because that is the only strong point in his studies. She accepts and after a while is surprised because she doesn't expect him to be really helpful. She actually accepted his offer because he seems childish and she was having trouble dealing with her young brother and was hoping it would be practice for her to figure out how to deal with her little brother. However, this doesn't help, but at least she will continue to study for her exam. Junichi asks Miya if she knows how Ei's brother is, but she didn't even know she had a brother, so he can find a way to help her. The next day he is late, so the teacher scolds him for not taking his punctuality seriously, and before he leaves, she grabs his butt. So the protagonist is surprised but comes up with an amazing idea. Although the teacher thinks she managed to motivate him with this new method. The protagonist runs with Ai, but here he meets Sae, so the conversation diverts to how big her breasts are, and this makes Ai jealous, so she leaves, without listening to the protagonist. He wants to talk, so he goes to the swimming club, but here he is caught by the girls. A comes over to see what is going on and takes the opportunity to make an attempt to apologize with a speech about how he appreciates even more the body that has been trained with sweat and tears. Hibiki realizes that the protagonist was talking to a girl and lets him free so he can do it. After the club, they go to the beach to talk, and he tells her that sometimes kids misbehave to get attention, so she just needs to be with her little brother more and things will get better. Then she thanks him for all the help he has given her, and as a reward she gives him a toy that his little brother didn't want because it was from last year. She makes him try it out and shows him the choreography of the character, which attracts the attention of some children who were there playing. They ask them to show them the toy more, and in the end she ends up giving it to the children so they can play with each other, since they were not really going to use it. Now she feels more confident dealing with children, so she thanks the main character even more. That night I can't stop thinking about Hunichi, so she starts thinking about how good Hunichi looks when he's reliable, and she can't wait to see him the next day. I was doing extra practice at the club, and the protagonist gets some tickets for a new amusement park that was about to open. Then he invites Ida and his little brother, but this couldn't go because it was last minute. Then they end up making a date for themselves. After the roller coaster, he tells her please for them not to go on something so high. Then they ride on other attractions like the spinning balls or the shooting games. Then they arrive at a haunted house that catches their attention. In the last corridor, an Egyptian god appears and turns Ai into a bowl of ramen. The main character tries to eat it up, but when he was about to take the first bite, she returns to normal, and she gets really upset with the main character for wanting to eat it. They go to the park where they met, and Ai, with a colder head, realizes that in spite of everything, it was fun. But now she wants to take advantage of the place where they met for the first time and use their swing. Hunichi ends up in a good position and Ai sits on him. Having him so close, she can't help but kiss him. This leaves Hunichi thoughtful for the next day, but he is surprised to see Ai acting so normal. Although when he mentions it, Ai immediately changes the conversation to ask him to go to the mall again. He stays waiting for her after school, but all the girls from the club leave before her, so he goes to see what happened and sees Ai arguing with Hibiki, to the point that she runs out in tears. Hunichi chases after her and jumps into the pool to catch up with her. Then Ai bursts into tears in his arms, and Ibiki leaves the job of calming her down to him. They bench Ai because her times are not improving, but he knows she tries too hard even outside the pool, so she shouldn't be sad about that. She asks him why he went for her when he saw her crying, and he tells her that he didn't think about it, but just felt that he couldn't leave her alone at that time. Then Ai is happy that he was there and takes the opportunity to ask him if he has time on Christmas Eve, because it will be good for him to help her in the stand that the swimming club will have for the festival, and the protagonist gladly accepts. The day of the festival arrives and Hibiki teaches him everything they have to do to be able to manage the stand. Then she leaves because she has to take Haruka with her, who was stealing all the food she could, and otherwise there will be nothing left to sell. This place was quite famous, so they have a lot of customers, but the girl from the tea club was upset to see that a man was helping out at the swimming club. They think that the level of their food has gone down a lot. A tells them that this has nothing to do with it, since she is the one who received the teachings from Hibiki herself. So they will have to repeat that after tasting the dishes they prepare. The tea club accepts the challenge, and certainly it is the taste they remember from the past years, so they apologize for having judged before time. And as an apology, they promise to promote them in the next stand. Then the teacher arrives drunk and interrupts them, so they have to take her away so that they can continue with their sales normally. The festival continues, and now they had even more customers, so they raised everything they had, but I had saved a plate for the two of them, so the protagonist is motivated to finish cleaning up so they can eat together. Hibiki and the others tell him not to worry, since they were going to clean up as a payment for being in charge of the stand alone, and now they only had to worry about having fun. Hunichi understands why they did so well when he tasted what they were cooking. Something that makes him curious is why she asked him if he had time off, so she shows him what she had in mind. For this, she takes him quite far, as they have to take a bus and go into a forest. So the protagonist begins to imagine possible scenarios. Either it's an erotic scene or it's worthy of a horror movie. She realizes he's getting the wrong idea, so she tells him it's nothing like that, since it's just a hot spring that's on her grandfather's land, so it's private water for relaxation. Hunichi goes in first while Ai changes. He lies to him, telling that she has her swimsuit on, yet they were super nervous because they were so close. She tries to break the silence by saying that a lot has happened in a very short time, and the protagonist agrees. So he gathers courage and she confesses her feelings to him. The protagonist does the same. She goes into the water out of embarrassment, but when the protagonist goes for her, she jumps on him and reveals that she didn't have anything like a swimsuit, so she kisses him and they spend a super happy Christmas in the hot springs. After this, he becomes a boyfriend who likes to be spoiled, and I was super happy to giving him all the love he wanted. In another scenario, he takes his childhood friend named Rihoko to buy the gift he will give to the girl he likes on their first date 2 years ago. But this was a little hard for Rihoko because of the feelings she has for him. Anyway, she had a lot of fun with him, but that also made her hurt almost as much as Shunichi did when he got stood up. Now in the present, she is quite careless and her friend has to help her even to wake up. She had forgotten something very important, so she comes back and ends up going to school late. To get in without problems, she decides to enter through a little hole behind the school, but she was stuck because she gained a few extra pounds. Hunichi is also late, so he sees her and helps her out. He tells her that she should stop eating so much because it's already noticeable, but the bell rings, so she hurries up. Rihoko decides to go on a diet, but her friend Kanae doesn't believe her because she always says the same thing. And also she says that while eating a lot of muffins. Rihoko says she will start the next day. When she was about to put a muffin in her mouth, she gets hit with a frisbee from Haruka, who apologizes. But Rihoko realizes that she had a nice figure, so she decides to start the diet as soon as possible, and gives her muffins to Hunichi to begin the diet. Kanae takes the opportunity to invite her to go skating together, and tries to convince the main character to go with them. So he has no choice but to go. Rihoko goes to the tea club and her friends bring some delicious cupcakes, so she grabs some and then tells them that she started the diet, which leaves them speechless since this is the opposite of a diet. On the other hand, Hunichi and his friends were talking, but suddenly they hear an intruder on the stairs, and it is no one other than Rihoko, who had hidden herself to it without being judged. He tells her that with that, she has already failed the diet again, but Rihoko says that now she is going to restart it and he supports her. Then they pass by the park where they played when they were kids, and she goes inside of nostalgia, but now the games are no longer her size, so she ends up getting stuck on the slide. In the evening, she weighs herself and realizes that she continues to put on weight, so she does a few exercises but gets really tired, so she leaves the rest of the session for the next day. The next day, she goes back to school short on time, so she faces her main enemy, the hole. But this time she managed to get through it easily because Hunichi thought of her and enlarged the hole so she could get through it easily, although she gave the credit to her intense 30-second training session. The next day they go skating and Rihoko wasn't very good at it, so she stays in a corner to avoid failing. Kanae is going to try to make her skate, but they both fall, so she leaves her in charge of the main character so they can have fun together. Then he tries to make her skate, but she runs away without being able to control herself, and he drops her on impulse but ends up seeing everything under her skirt. Despite everything, she had fun and discovers what to give him as a present. Rihoko applies for a place for her club at the festival. The president of the tea club sees Hunichi and asks him to help her carry things, and he accepts. He asks how she knows him, and she explains that it's because Rihoko keeps talking about him. She arrives and is surprised to see him there, but decides to rest in what they have just installed. Then she asks Hunichi to help her at the festival since some muscle could be good for her, and he accepts without any problem. He qualifies as a possible future member of the club and is told that they had plans to enlist him. The club girls have their methods for this. The festival arrives and he goes as he promised to help. After helping with the physical work, they ask him to join the tea club as well, but as expected, he refuses. So they just send him to hand out flyers with Rihoko so they can try to get more members. After a while, they notice what's been done in the center, and it turns out that it was a giant Christmas tree, so they spend the rest of the festival admiring it. Later, they go to a park to relax and talk a little about their past. Then Rihoko takes the opportunity to give him his Christmas present. He feels a little bad because he doesn't have a present for her, so he says she can ask for anything. But Rihoko doesn't know what to ask for, so his present is left hanging. The next day, they do the cleaning and invite Junichi to an outdoor tea ceremony. He feels how good the properly prepared tea can be, but Rihoko would rather be inside in the heat. Junichi is surprised by the pleasant experience of an outdoor tea ceremony, because it's a totally different vibe, so the president tells him that it's something they do every year to welcome new members. Although lately they only add Rihoko because it rained that day, and if it wasn't for her, the meal they prepared would have been spoiled. They see him quite interested in the tea, so they teach him how to prepare it properly. His technique was clumsy, as it is not the same as the president's. Rihoko tells him that if he wants, she can teach him, but she also is a beginner, so she was almost at the same level as him. Then he goes to eat something at the restaurant with Rihoko, but she refuses to order anything because she is on a diet. He feels uncomfortable because she keeps looking at him with sad puppy dog eyes when she sees that he has a cake. Rihoko asks if he is going to do anything in the new year, and since he was free, invites him to go to the temple, so the protagonist gladly accepts. Rihoko's mood goes through the roof and she ends up breaking the diet, with the excuse that she'll make up for it with exercise later. His friends call to do something that night, but he already had plans with Rihoko, and she is surprised that they are so close again. On the other hand, Rihoko had to keep his promise to exercise even if she gets tired after a couple of push-ups. So the last day of the year arrives and they ring the doorbell, while Junichi is taking a shower, so he has to go out in a towel. He is surprised to see that the one who rang was Rihoko, but to his bad luck he drops the towel so she sees him naked. Rihoko notices that he has improved a lot in his team making and feels a little bad since he is probably better than her. Junichi starts showing off about his techniques, which annoys Miya, and Rihoko has to stop them. For this, she changes the mood with some snacks she was practicing, but this goes against her diet even though she makes them with little sugar. She breaks her diet anyway and enjoys it as much as she can. Then she starts dancing with Miya, and Miya is surprised at how well she dances and sings, so she thinks she could be a great idol. But she doesn't want to get too busy because she couldn't be able to spend important moments with Junichi. The hours go by and Miya falls asleep, so Junichi tells Rihoko to wake her up while he goes to change. But when he returns, Rihoko has also fallen asleep, so he cancels the visit to the temple and goes to sleep like the rest of the people. The next day, Rihoko recaps and realizes that they haven't gone to the temple yet, so he wakes them up to go as early as possible. Then they walk almost alone since few people go after midnight. Rihoko hands up her wishes, which are that her diet is successful, new club members, and most of all that her feelings for Junichi be corresponding. The winter vacations are over and Rihoko hasn't done anything to get the protagonist, so Kanae starts to do all kinds of strategies to generate favorable environments, but Rihoko doesn't think it's necessary, since this kind of relationship is the same she has always had with the protagonist, since they were just kids, and it's fine to keep it that way. Anyway, she goes with Junichi to talk for a while as usual, and decides to go to the tea club after school. When she arrives, she is surprised that there was no one there, but not for long because soon the others arrived and it turns out that they were trying to enlist Haruka to take advantage of her popularity, but they were not very successful. The club will be dissolved if they do not get more members, then they have to take desperate measures, so they ask the protagonist to help in the club as a front president, so that it is not dissolved. But it is more like a joke that the protagonist begins to seriously consider, since Rihoko will feel very sad if they dissolve the tea club, as she had so many nice experiences with her two superiors. Although she still doesn't give up and plans to give everything to prevent the club from disintegrating. Valentine's Day was about to arrive and Rihoko plans to change the chip a little bit, since instead of chocolates, she will give scream shows. On the other hand, the main character goes to the club to talk to the president, because he was worried but didn't want to admit it. Then the president tries to get the information out of him and he has to run away to avoid confessing his true intentions. Back with Rihoko, She tells Kanae what she will do with Junichi, and it turns out that the president told him as a joke that it was a dessert she had made to give to the love of her life, but Kanae says nothing as it is intention that counts. This year, the protagonist leaves, so poor Omehara is left alone looking for comfort in anyone. Junichi is surprised by the weird chocolates he was given, but since it was delicious, he doesn't think much about it. Then he asks Rihoko if she likes someone, since she is quite popular among the boys, but she doesn't know what to say and the protagonist goes back to talk to her as usual, and Rihoko breaks the atmosphere of interrogation with her attitude. Days and weeks go by, where her diet continues to be bumpy. Then the protagonist helps out at the tea club, and the third graders graduate, so Rihoko has to say goodbye and apologizes for not being able to get anyone to keep the club going. But they were not upset, since it was so much fun to be with her for all these years, and Rihoko can help but burst into tears to say goodbye to the president. And Junichi tells them that he decided to join the club to take care of the club and Rihoko, so she cries with joy. So the president visits him and congratulates him. So Rihoko can now go on with her day-to-day life as normal, since she is happy to have the protagonist by her side even though it hasn't evolved into anything romantic. We start with Ayatsuji's route. In another scenario, the protagonist is still depressed about the first year, so Umehara accompanies him in his loneliness and promises to be successful in love next year, but despite this, everything continues normally. They need to get the representative for the festival, and Ayatsuji wants to do it, but the tutor doesn't want her to do it alone since she is the classroom representative, so Junichi offers himself as a second representative to help her in any way he can. His friends are surprised that he volunteered. They think he's going after Ayatsuji, but the protagonist tells them that if he didn't force himself, he wouldn't attend the Christmas festival, so no, he can't miss it. Even Mia is surprised at the protagonist with how lazy he is, decides to have an extra responsibility. Although she was happy because now she will have a little influence inside the committee's decisions. Everyone fills out their applications, and the protagonist is surprised that she organized everything to make the job easier, but he feels a little useless because he couldn't help in anything. Then she asks him for a favor, so she takes him to the utensils room to classify everything they have. The door had a trick to open it, and it doesn't open from the inside, so she tells him not to close it. But the protagonist opens the window and the wind and taps closing it. He apologizes because it was his fault that they were locked up, so she keeps calm because someone will come for them. So now they just have to move forward with their work. They finished organizing everything and still no one was coming, but for their good fortune, Mia wanted to enter to look for something inside that room and she managed to open the door for them. So they pick up what they wanted and the door almost closes again, so the main character nearly has a heart attack, but happily it was just an accident and they return to open it for them. Junichi meets Ayatsuji's sister, who congratulates her on getting a boyfriend. Then she says goodbye and takes her sister away so she doesn't say another word. The next day, several groups were unhappy because his requests weren't fulfilled as they wanted and he doesn't know what to do, so he runs to find Ayatsuji, who he meets at the pool. She was helping the teachers with an extra physical education class for those who were absent, so she can't go right away, but she promises she'll do it as soon as she gets out of it. The protagonist leaves a bit calmer but realizes how amazing she is for everything she does, and he is not the only one, since Haruka spies on her because she thinks she's amazing too. Junichi continues with his committee work and notices that there is a notebook, so he begins to read it and is surprised because he has very specific orders. But at that moment, Ayatsuji arrives because that is her notebook, and as the protagonist has it in his hand, he grabs him by the tie and asks him if he had read what was inside. As he saw something, Ayatsuji forces him to go to another place outside the school because she cannot allow anyone to know her secret, so she regrets it because she didn't want to lose a classmate. He starts to get scared and tells her that he doesn't know why those notes on the calendar are so important, so she is surprised as she thinks he saw her secret. She calms down a bit and lets it go, but the protagonist knows that she has a split personality. But he wanted to know what would happen if he read what she was hiding so much, and she tells him that he wouldn't have been able to go back to school and that she wouldn't have allowed the person who read it to go back to school either. He is scared, although he is curious to see if anyone will believe him if he told them that Ayatsuji has a split personality. so he goes to Umehara to tell him, but she shows up and the protagonist is exposed. So she interrogates him to find out what he was trying to tell them about her. He tells her that he just wanted to confirm if they will believe that she had a split personality, so she tells him that she won't let him check it. For this, she gives him a lot of tasks and keeps him always around, so he ends up too tired, but slowly he starts to get into rhythm. Junichi starts to worry about Ayatsuji since she does more than anyone else, so she goes to hand her a couple of drinks and offers his support since it's too late. But this surprises the girl since though he knows her true personality, he acts friendly. He explains to her that despite being the way she is, she does more than the rest, so he wants to support and tells her to rest so she won't be late and let the representatives down. The next day, she is sick, so she doesn't go to school, and he goes to visit her at home to give her something to eat, but he meets her sister. She is happy that someone is going to see her little sister, but as she doesn't talk to her much, she tells him to deliver the things to Ayatsuji himself, and stays there while she sleeps. After a while, she wakes up and is scared to see him in her room, but she is glad that he went to visit, so she tells him not to worry, as it's just a slight fever and she will go to school the next day. He leaves to let her rest, talks a little with Ayatsuji's sister, but he realizes that there isn't a very good relationship between the two of them, which seems strange to him. The next day, she recovers, so she goes back to attending consultations about the festival, and her first applicants are Hibiki and Haruka. She wanted Hibiki to wear the sensual swimsuit to highlight her figure, but she was not very sure as it is a public festival. He starts creating images of what it will be like, but Ayatsuji stops him before he can imagine anything dirty. She allows them as long as it is in moderation, as there will be people outside the school. After class, he meets Ayatsuji and realizes that a dog peed on his foot, so he carries her to the sink so she can wash herself, which is quite embarrassing for her, even though she seems to be having fun. At night, she keeps thinking about the protagonist, which is surprising for her because it is the first time she thinks about someone. The next day, the tutor recommends Ayatsuji to cancel some things to free herself from the burden, but she refuses and convinces the teacher to give her one last chance. The protagonists agree with the teacher, but if they keep going at their current speed, they weren't going to finish everything they set up to do. So she recommended that they get help from other students, which at first she didn't like, but recognized that it was the only way to do it. The next day, they get the support of many students, but a group of girls start to complain about Ayatsuji because she spends a lot of time with him and they think she is wasting her time because she is doing couple things. A girl from this group blames Yatsuhi for the delay she is having this year compared to the last year, even though she did it alone, and blames her for everything because now she spends a lot of time with the protagonist doing who knows what. He tries to defend her, but the girls were totally determined that Ayatsuhi was wasting her time, so they don't let him speak. So she loses control and her dark side comes out, and shames the girl of this group since they had not achieved anything and yet they keep criticizing the ones who make the festival go ahead. Junichi thinks she went a little too far, but Ayatsuji doesn't want to talk about it and instead burns her notebook because she wants Junichi to be hers because he's the only one she has fun with and she feels happy. Junichi is not against as long as she is happy with him, so a new relationship is established with a kiss. The next day, Ayatsuji returns to normal, but the protagonist realizes that the group of bullies is trying to terrorize her. Then Kaoru and Tanaka take her side because they do not like that the game is all against her alone, and the protagonist also joins because he will not allow them to win so unfairly, so the girls desist in their intentions to harass her. After school, those who stayed behind to help with the festival are a few, but she was fine with those who stayed behind, so they work as hard as they can until it gets dark and everyone goes home except Ayatsuji. Junichi goes to see her and tells her that they need the girls to finish on time because they were not going to make it either. But Ayatsuji gets upset because she doesn't want to apologize to that group, and when she sees that the protagonist insists, she starts to cry and slaps him because she feels disappointed that he doesn't understand her feelings and tries to assume that he knows everything about her. The next day, even though she said all this, she makes up with a group of girls and they tell him that she even cried to make it happen. He asks what happened to what she said last night, Ayatsuji tells him that the stubborn girl who refused to do whatever it took to accomplish her goals is gone, so now the festival is going to be a success. However, the protagonist was confused as he doesn't understand what she means when she says she is gone. Thanks to everyone's hard work, they can finish on time, so Ayatsuji thanks everyone for working so hard, but the protagonist still can't forget the conversation they had early, so he moves a little away from her. The festival begins and they both have some free time, but he goes his own way and keeps thinking about why he is so worried about Ayatsuji's new attitude since he doesn't like her, but he finds it too strange the change from one moment to another. He meets Umehara and thinks it was crazy for having failed another year in love, but in reality he is just burning a love letter from many years ago. So he becomes melancholy and Junichi apologizes for having failed again. Although Umehara tells him that it is still too early for him to give up, so he has to give his everything until the end. Ayatsuji dresses up as Santa and starts giving out presents to all the students, while the children who attended ignore her because they don't like her. Then the festival ends and everything is happiness and joy, but he wanted to talk to Ayatsuji alone and he doesn't say anything at first. Then she was about to leave when the protagonist stops her with a hug and tells her that he loves her, but he also loves the stubborn girl he knew from the beginning, so she didn't have to make her disappear. She can't help but cry and hits the protagonist's heart because she changed just because of the argument they had at night, and now he tells her that he likes that part of her. Then Junichi is happy that she is still there, so she lets herself fall into his arms. She explains that as a child she was very disappointed that Santa didn't exist, so she decided to do his job, and that is why she offers herself to work as a festival organizer, because that way she can bring happiness to everyone who attends the festival at Christmas. But as wonderful as it seems to them, she still had a lot of work to do because the children are not happy with their activities. He tells her not to be discouraged because Christmas is not over yet, and there are still many other Christmas in which she will try to make many people happy. So he asks her to make him happy too. She laughs because the request is usually the other way around, but it doesn't matter and they kiss again, but this time in a more natural way, so they confirm their relationship. And this time they are both very much in love and determined to have Christmas for the rest of the years together. They even have a beautiful daughter who is very happy at Christmas with her family, and they learn to enjoy the happiness of this celebration that caused them sadness in their school days. In this scenario, a girl he doesn't know very well named Risa confesses to him, and he accepts because she is quite pretty, and it's obvious that she is in love with him. Then, when they are about to kiss, the bell rings, so they have to leave it for the next day. Junichi waits until the next day with great anxiety and therefore feels that he has already overcome the bad streak he had years ago, because he finally had a pretty girlfriend. He asks her how she fell in love with him, and Risa tells him that she has been watching him for a long time to the point that she knows how much he likes big breasts. Risa was a bit sad because hers were quite small. He tries to tell her that those are Umehara's likes, but Risa is sure, so she says she is doing her secret things to have more weight. She asks him not to tell anyone about their relationship, since it is the only condition she sets for them to be boyfriend and girlfriend, and Junichi accepts this condition because he knows how in love she is with him. They even start going on dates at night, so he can't see her. And the protagonist shows that he's over his trauma by taking her to the park where he was stood up, because now he can turn it into a happy place with his new girlfriend. The next day, Junichi asks her to go to the festival together, but Risa is not sure, so she asks him for time to think about it. The next day, Junichi asks her to go to the festival together. She really wanted to go with him, but she couldn't because she did terrible things to the girls who tried to get together with him. When a girl will become close to him, she will tell her that he had a girlfriend by presenting a random photo that could be interpreted to be a couple. Then it will be wrong for her to show up as his girlfriend when he pushed the other girls away. Junichi meets the girl who stood him up and is surprised that she can talk to him despite what she did, but she tells him that she went to the place and he never showed up. A classmate told her about a last-minute change, so he is surprised as he didn't know anything about it. On the day of the festival, Junichi asks Risa what she has decided. She says that she can't go with him because of the terrible things she's done. He persistently asks about what she is hiding to the point that Risa confesses all her crimes, from the date when he was stood up to all the girls he kept away to protect him. He is choked and Risa promises to stay away from him in order to avoid interfering with the girls who fall in love with him. But he stops her, as in spite of everything he still likes her and wants to make things right so that they can officially become boyfriend and girlfriend. Risa decides to fix her mistake herself and promises him to clear things up with the girls she lied to, so they can go to the festival. On the other hand, Miya, who witnesses when Junichi talks about porn books with Umehara, worries about her brother's future because she thinks he will never get a girlfriend at this rate. So she asks her friends what they think about Junichi, although to her surprise they had good opinions about him. Miya explains her concern, but they don't think his life is going to fail in such an extreme because he reads magazines like that. Miya wanted to confirm for herself what kind of person he is in his day-to-day life. So she spies on him and notices that he talks to many women like Ayatsuji and even Haruka. Risa, who is also spying on him, tells her that he has a wide range of women to talk to, so she keeps spying on him for the rest of the day with Risa's help. Miya sees that he deals with women, but wonders why he doesn't have a girlfriend. She gets the idea that maybe he doesn't like women, so she has a serious conversation with him as she wanted to make it clear that he has her full support if that's the case. Junichi is surprised. She thinks this and tells her that he likes women, which clarifies things. She is more relaxed, and it is only a matter of time till he gets a girlfriend. But Risa wanted to make sure that that girl was the right one to take his heart. While they were walking around, a boy from Mia's classroom stops her as he likes her very much and wants to be her boyfriend. She rejects him and Risa asks why since he was quite handsome, so she explained that she doesn't feel anything for him, so she doesn't know what she will do in a relationship with him. Thanks to this, she realizes that the protagonist must feel the same way, which makes her a little uneasy, and to understand a little more about his feelings, she grabs a kitten from the street and tries to adopt it. He finds out and scolds her because his parents won't allow it, and also this kitten must have a family because it's a baby, so its mother cat must be looking for it. So they go to the park where she picks it up to look for his mother. They spend a lot of time looking, but when they are about to leave, they find the mother of the cat. Miya gets a little worried since they are biting each other, but he explains that it's their way of playing and showing affection, and they don't get mad at each other for these actions. Miya asks her brother if he will look a lover for her, too, and obviously he says yes. So Miya jumps on him and shows her affection with a bite on his neck. After spending some time with him, Miya realizes he has so many friends even though he is a bit of a pervert. She confirms it when he accidentally enters the bathroom while she is taking a shower. After school, Haruka invites Junichi to eat, and they go to the restaurant where Kaoru works. But he was happy as he never expected to go to eat with Haruka. She wanted to eat something sweet, and they order a parfait to share. He is glad that Kaoru was not the one who takes his order, but then she is the one who brings it. Haruka realizes that she is a friend, so she decides to hide because she thinks it's funny what Junichi will say to justify her ordering that parfait. And she is not wrong because Kaoru wanted to know who he came with. Junichi sees Haruka having fun under the table, but it will be very weird to tell her that he is with the girl who is under the table, so he says that he is with Umehara. Kaoru laughs and leaves, so the protagonist is totally embarrassed. At least he enjoyed a parfait of love with Haruka. The next day, he returns home as usual, but finds a Santa Claus dress and is surprised because it is quite short. Kaoru wanted to become independent, so she has 5 jobs. Now that she is getting along better with her stepfather, she starts to think she might be able to stop working. She asks for help to sell the cake so that he can share his warmth by being near her. After some hours, he managed to sell everything and thinks it might be a good time to ask her out for Christmas. Days later, his birthday arrives, but his family was out, so there wasn't any gift or party, and this depresses him a lot. So he locks himself in the closet. Then he hears the doorbell and is surprised because it is Sae who is there to give him a birthday present. He invites her in without thinking that she will be nervous to be alone at home, but then the roles change because the gift is an album of sensual photos of Sae, since he said he likes magazines like that. Sae gets very nervous because of the way he sees the pictures, so she tries to close the album, but he only makes them both fall down and he lands on top of her. Later, he walks her back home and discovers that it was Mia herself who took these photos, so he blames her for the awkward moment and she was having fun wondering if he liked her gift. On the other hand, I was a bit sad because she wasn't in the main team of the swimming club. Junichi goes to see her and they meet for a while after her practice in a cafe and have a normal conversation. Junichi wanted to cheer her up, so he grabs her from the behind and puts his hands in her pockets, as he thinks the physical contact might make her change her mood. But this only makes it more embarrassing. Anyway, the inside was very warm, so he didn't want to take his hands out. She felt ticklish and told him to stop because she had to go shopping, and as he wanted to stay by her side, he went shopping with her. On the other hand, Junichi goes to the tea club and notices that Rihoko gained some weight, and now she is the president, and the club is not in danger anymore, so she can relax. She changes the topic and asks him about a rare nail clipper that caught her attention. Then the protagonist explains to her that it is the best nail clipper that exists, and if she wants, he can give her a demonstration. She accepts and starts to take off her socks as her fingernails are short, but as soon as he touches her feet, she feels ticklish and her heart starts to race. Anyway, she feels she is being served like a princess, which he likes a lot and tells him that he should be a professional at it as he does it quite well. He looks up a bit and realizes he was in a position where he can see everything, and Rihoko is aware of it, so she gets very nervous, but she can move because otherwise Junichi might cut her. Another day he comes back with Ayatsuji and smells something nice, which was a bread truck that was freshly baked. So Ayatsuji goes to buy some and comes back with a bunch of bread, since she had used her acting to make herself look prettier and get a bunch of bread for free. She makes him carry everything and he couldn't eat, so she had to feed him in the mouth. But Ayatsuji makes several threats, so the protagonist thinks he is not going to eat anything, which annoys him. But Ayatsuji ends up giving him more bread than he can chew. We continue with Ayatsuji's route. A month after the festival where they declare their love, he dreams about Ayatsuji washing his back, but in the best part of the dream, Mia wakes him up. He goes to school depressed for missing the best part of his dream, but meets Ayatsuji on the way and thinks about how he still can't believe that someone so smart is his girlfriend. It's time to elect the new student council president and obviously Ayatsuji applies, yet he didn't expect to be vice president if she wins. Ayatsuji really liked the way he helped her at the festival and believes he is qualified for the position. This was not the only surprise though. Another girl named Kurosawa applies and also puts him as her vice president, which could be interpreted as an open declaration. Ayatsuji questions him and he tells her that he doesn't even know her, so they leave it like that. He was still thinking that this could mean that Kurosawa is in love with him. She hits him for getting distracted while studying because she guesses that he was thinking. Ayatsuji was not too worried because the next day they will be pulling the boats and there she plans to show how far they are in terms of their ability to get boats. They start to think about what they can do to overcome the situation, but the only obvious thing is that Kurosawa is really on the offensive against them. Their friends arrive with the flyers and get ready to do publicity for them. Junichi has a great idea to make a poster. After insisting, she accepts, although he realizes that it is very similar to taking photos that will appear in his private magazines, which makes him nervous and he tries to look for something farther away from Ayatsuji's campaign, and he realizes it. In any case, all his efforts paid off, as she was very close to the finish line. Kurosawa decides to take extreme measures, so she calls him to a remote place and sends Ayatsuji the news. When she was nearby, she confesses her love to the protagonist and steals a kiss from him. He realizes that he was being watched. Ayatsuji pulls Junichi into the shed and he tries to justify himself, but it takes him by surprise as Ayatsuji kisses him. He doesn't understand what's going on, but she tells him that he shouldn't be so innocent because that trap was obvious. She only wanted to pretend to kiss him and try to make them fight and get out of the election. The protagonist realizes everything Kurosawa planned, so he promised to be more careful from now on. Ayatsuji makes him swear in exchange for another kiss. Election day arrives and Junichi is quite tired since he gave her a gift that collected everyone's signatures showing their support, which ends up motivating Ayatsuji for the speech. And before she gets on stage, she asks him and promises to do her best. She gives her speech to try to get the last vote she was missing. The results came in after that tense moment and finally they found out that Ayatsuji won by a big difference. In the classroom, they have a small celebration and congratulate Junichi for becoming the vice president. On the other hand, Mia was happy that Sae participated because it is a step to overcome her shyness. The one who was not so happy was Kurosawa because she didn't like the beating she got, so she swears that someday she will stay with Junichi as revenge. The couple returns home and she tells him not to relax because now she has to concentrate on her studies. She is not going to lower her expectations just because he can't keep up with her. At that moment, a dog chases them and the protagonist tries to play the hero by getting its attention but doesn't notice he runs straight into the lake and ends up soaking wet. She takes him home so he doesn't catch a cold and tells him she is going to wash his back as a reward for his brave act. Then he starts to believe that it will be like in the dream he had a few days ago. But Ayatsuji enters with a swimsuit. She washes his back and as he gets out of the bathroom, he accidentally shows her too much and gets slapped. As she washes his back, he realizes that it feels better than washing oneself and asks her to never leave his side and to never kiss another guy but him. Finally, they give each other a kiss to confirm their love. Days go by and they both continue as a happy couple until they become adults, where we know how their story ends. We continue with Rihoko's arc. Some months after she became the president of the tea club, she doesn't lose her old habit of falling asleep and being the protagonist's childhood friend. Her friend is a bit disappointed for she thinks there was some progress. Junichi is more worried about his porn videos than doing anything with Rihoko. Then she tells him it's time to tell him her feelings directly. At the tea club, Rihoko tries to talk to him but he doesn't seem to be listening to her. She realizes he was sick. It turns out that he got heat stroke from staying up so late at night, but he doesn't want to talk about what he's been up to. He asks if she's okay, even though just by looking at her he realizes she's been eating a lot again. Rihoko can't believe it's noticeable, so they go to the nurse's office and weigh themselves. Rihoko is embarrassed to let him know her weight, so she asks him to turn around and then covers it up so he doesn't find out her real weight. To change the topic, Rihoko remembers that when they were kids they used to do a lot of this nursing thing. He remembers they always measured each other and as she was growing faster he tried to beat her in other things like who had the biggest chest, but obviously he always lost. Junichi has very good memories of that time. After this they go to a park and he is tired as he has eaten badly lately because his parents weren't at home and neither he or Mia can cook, so they were eating noodles and watermelon for dinner. She can't allow this, so she offers to make dinner and obviously he begs her to do it. She goes home to change and to do the shopping. She meets the ex-president of the tea club and they were selling eel in their free time, and finding out that Rihoko hasn't made any progress, they tell her it's hopeless. Then they find out the protagonist was sick and she goes to make him dinner, so they offer to give him something from the place because they have healing properties and she thinks they are playing with her just like with the muffins, but this time it was real. Rihoko thinks she is taking all the eel, but instead they prepared a soap and give her other ingredients to make a revitalizing meal because they hope that with this dinner he will activate his virility and finally take a step forward with Rihoko. On the way to Junichi's house, a classmate of Rihoko runs into her and sees she's quite pretty now, dressed in casual clothes, and tells her to go with him because he has something to say. He was nearby and sees her, so he goes out to find her, but Makabe corners her and tells her that she is very pretty and wants her to be his girlfriend. Rihoko says no because she doesn't know him and it's too sudden, plus she already has someone she likes. He listens to everything she says but he does nothing. Rihoko arrives even before him and Mia is surprised that they haven't met on the way. Junichi arrives and gets nervous and Mia notices, but they try to pretend nothing is wrong because she gets down with dinner. He tries to talk to her about what he heard but doesn't know how to say it, so he ends up asking a silly question. She takes advantage of the fact that he is in front of her to confess her feelings, but she doesn't dare to do so neither. So he just tells her that the food is delicious and he is satisfied for the first time in a long time. The phone rings and he knows it's probably for Mia, so he sends her to answer it. And while they are alone, he tries to talk to Rihoko again, and so does she. But Mia interrupts them. Seems he was super happy because she is going to the adventure park with her friends. They celebrate with dessert since there is always room from dessert. To Rihoko's bad luck, it starts to rain, so she has to stay at the protagonist's house to sleep. He lends her clothes and notices how big Rihoko's breasts are. Mia throws him out so he will stop bothering her with his perverted looks. In the middle of the night, Mia gets up, half asleep because she wanted to go to the bathroom after eating so much ice, and Rihoko can't sleep, so she leaves to go with Junichi to the first floor. Neither of them were sleepy, so they start talking about the past and remember how much fun they had with the fireworks, so they relive those moments a bit. She tries to declare herself, but burns him with her flare and they end up on top of each other. They get nervous, but he has the courage to confess that he likes her, and even though he didn't realize it, they were always together and now he is sure of his feelings. She does the same and tells him that she has always loved him and that she always wants to be with him. The next day, they can see each other as not to raise suspicions. This is even more suspicious, so Mia keeps asking what's going on between the two of them. We continue with Dai's arc. Almost a year after their relationship starts, they see each other very rarely, so Junichi appreciates a lot when they are together. He studies hard to be a responsible adult, and she is now the captain of the swimming team, which is another responsibility. However, I always wake him up so he won't be late. She threatens to get him out of bed, but this time she ends up putting her to bed because he was really tired from studying in the morning. Mia then tells him not to exaggerate by trying harder than he should. Then Umehara spends the day begging him to help him get a girlfriend, but he craves to see Ai, so he goes to the swimming club and notices new girls, so he focuses his attention on her so he doesn't fall into temptation. She sees him and Junichi thinks she will greet him in a sweet way, but it was forbidden for a guy to enter the pool while they are there, so they surround him and scold him. Ai's friends think he has learned his lesson, so Ai is about to free him, but Mia wanted to see him suffer more and told her that he was seeing the other girls, which earned him an extra scolding from Ai. Ai agreed to forgive him only if he will go with her to shop for dinner and not do it again because he should know the rules of the swimming club. The next day he was in the nurse's office because he was tired, so I went to visit him and he remembered that Mia fell asleep when she was in her father's lap and he sang to her, so he wants her to do the same, so he can rest better. She hesitated a bit because it is quite embarrassing, but since they are in the nurse's office and they can cover up, she agrees to fulfill his wish, and the protagonist stays between her legs. Ai is excited because it will soon be Christmas Eve and they will have a date. But she didn't count on the fact that he will have an intensive camp for his exam, which starts on December 23rd. He apologizes for not being able to go out with her on the 24th. She pretends that nothing is wrong and mentions that she also has a lot of things to do for that day, so everything's fine. But in reality, she is very upset about not being able to go out with her boyfriend, so he gets very distracted in class, and even Mia notices that she was starting blanking. She wanted to, at last, give him a gift, so she buys him a blanket to use at the camp, but she can't find the protagonist anywhere, and to make matters worse, she hears Kaoru and Tanaka talking about how nice Christmas dates are. The next day, she can't see him neither, because he was taken to the camp very early because he made a mistake in the practice and got the lowest grade. So she walks home alone and sad because she remembers all the beautiful moments she spent with him, and even though she tries hard, she can't help crying because they are so far apart. The festival starts and everything is going great for the swimming club. The first year girls are in charge of the stand and she can go to rest, but she has nothing to do. Then she sits down where she had been with the protagonist last year and realizes that she feels very lonely without him, so she starts to cry, which surprises her because she feels she has become very weak without realizing it. After the festival, Mia invites her to her Christmas party with Sae, but she has forgotten to buy a present for her little brother, so she tells them to go ahead and she will arrive later. She walks through the city and remembers that today she should be with her boyfriend as promised. She also sees a toy that makes her nostalgic and starts to cry again. However, this time Junichi appears behind her as he escaped from the camp, after finishing all his drills because he couldn't go another second without seeing her. She tells Mia that she is with him, then she says that there is no drama and she is happy for her brother. Then they go to buy the gift for Ai's little brother and leave it on his bed, so now they are free to have their days normally. Junichi starts to freeze to death as he forgot his coat, so I wanted to give him hers, but Junichi won't accept it unless she gets a new coat as a gift. One he was looking for a while ago and thinks it will look pretty good on her. In the end, he ends up wearing Ai's coat, which is funny because it's too small for him, but it doesn't stop them from having a fun night in the playroom. Then they walk around without direction but end up in the model area, so he gets nervous even though he realizes that there is no refusal to enter one of these. Then he was about to tell her, but they run into the tutor who was coming out of the massage room. Due to the embarrassment, they run out and start laughing at the surreal moment they just lived. Then she confesses to him that she is afraid that he is far away since she feels lonely and thinks that this will continue even in the university. He then tells her not to worry because he will always be by her side and will do everything he can to make the time to be by her side. He had to go back to camp anyway, so she agreed to wait for him a little longer, and it's the perfect situation for them to kiss under the snow. Then they go home to watch the fireworks and promise each other to take care of one another for years to come. We continue with Kaoru's arc. Before the summer vacation starts, Kaoru and Junichi were working on a play at the Adventure Park, but Kaoru changed the script to give him a couple of blows just for the sake of annoying him. He does the same and ends up taking over the play by trapping Kaoru in his tentacles. A few days before, they were at school and they were acting as usual. They hadn't really gotten anywhere all this time because when they were alone, they always did the same thing. Tanaka tells Kaoru that it would be good for them to do something different, like a trip. Then Kaoru mentions it to Junichi and he thinks it's a good idea, but he didn't have a cent in his pocket, so they decided to get a part-time job. But they end up getting fired because of this script change they made. To make matters worse, their pay was reduced as a punishment. Junichi realizes this and gives up the vacation trip, but Kaoru still doesn't give up and doesn't hesitate to look for another job to save money, even though it wasn't necessary because they found a bus tour that was very cheap, so they take the tour to go on the trip as they wanted. After getting ready, they hurry to the bus and Kaoru prepares a bunch of limited edition candy to try on the trip. She asks the protagonist if he has a place he wants to stay, but he was fine just being with her, so they both get very nervous about how cheesy this sounded. Junichi changes the subject to give Kaoru her punishment for changing the script. Then he puts a candy in his mouth and tells her to separate the chocolate from the cookie with her mouth without touching his lips. Kaoru makes the effort but has to move around a lot because it doesn't come out easy and everyone turns to see what's going on. Then he turns red because of the misunderstanding. Later, they are given a 20-minute break so that they can get off and buy or eat whatever they want. Kaoru buys things at the mall and leaves all the stuff on the bus, but since they had plenty of time left, they decide to go into a restaurant well known for its dishes. They didn't count on the driver mistaking them for the candy covered by their coats, so they end up leaving without them. They come out of the restaurant and realize they were left behind, so they try to call the agency and Mia, but neither of them answer. They realize they were alone and with nothing to do, so they get a little upset. To their good fortune, a truck passes by and the driver is nice people, so he drops them off near an overnight place by a train station so they can get back. Although they were fighting all the way and the driver had to calm them down a bit, as he says that people who love each other very much can even fight, which embarrasses them a lot. He also mentions the hot springs to them, so he gets really excited as it could be a situation he has been looking forward for quite some time. But when they get to the inn, they get scared of how scary the entrance is, and even Kaoru, who normally loves horror houses, was scared. Being in a forest in the middle of the night, she attaches herself to the protagonist until they meet the owner of the inn, who unintentionally gives them a scare. She takes them to the entrance and tells them that they can bathe freely because they are the only ones staying there. But on the way to the showers, they see the old man with a knife, so they panic as if it were a horror movie. But she was only preparing dinner, so they enter the hot springs a little more relieved. Kaoru sees something strange nearby and screams. He goes to see what's going on, but since he was naked, she throws him a bucket. She wanted to keep him close anyway, so she tells him to come in with his back turned so he won't see anything. A monkey takes her bra, so she stands up and the protagonist turns around and sees his girl without any clothes on. Then they go to it and are very satisfied. They go to sleep and Kaoru tries to talk to him about the purpose of the trip, that is to clarify the line between friends and couple. However, he falls asleep and leaves the conversation pending. The next day, he couldn't find his wallet, so Kaoru pays for the lodging and almost runs out of money. He remembers that he left it on top of the payphone at the stop they met. So now he was completely out of money. Because of this, they start arguing again and Kaoru gets upset as she felt he was blaming her, so she goes off alone and he chases her so as not to leave her alone. To their bad luck, it starts to rain, so they run to a bus stop. There, they have a moment to think with a cool head, so Kaoru apologizes. Actually, she feels it's her fault because it's her ideas that caused them to be left behind. Then, he also feels guilty for not controlling the situation better. They both accept their part of the blame and make up, but unfortunately, the bus stop was in disuse, so they have to find another way to get back. The protagonist calls home again and Mia tells him that the agency was taking care of his things, but she doesn't let him talk and runs out of time. He has no money left to call her back, so they go to find a police station to ask for help. But he wanted to hang out since they were at the beach, so they start playing and Kaoru realizes that no matter where they are or what they are doing, if it is with him, they will have fun anyway. After a while, Umehara sees them from a boat as he was training to prepare sushi away from home. That is their salvation as they now had a way to return home. The next day, Kaoru thanks Tanaka for recommending the trip as it is now clearer their deal as a couple. Then paints a portrait of their trip for her art assignment and sits on his lap to put some finishing touches on it because that's just the way she is. We continue with Sae's arc. Almost 10 months after Junichi started dating her, he continues recording to show how cute she is. One thing that has changed for the better is Sae's shyness, as she can now talk to the ladies in the kitchen without any problems. He also gets along well with the little dog that scared her months ago, although with the big ones it is still a step to overcome. At work, she became quite popular, but not only there, because of the matching context, the boys kept staring at her, and now she is one of the most popular girls in the school. Junichi starts to feel the eyes on the two of them. Unfortunately, he is not the most outstanding in school, so they don't believe that he is really her boyfriend. He wants to prove that he is, and tells her that he will buy lunch. He didn't know exactly what Sae likes, so he keeps thinking but is rushed because there are a lot of people waiting. Junichi plays it safe and orders one of everything so he can't go wrong. But that's not the end of his suffering because now he doesn't know what sauces to put on the omelette. He asks Rihoko, but she dismisses her opinion because she is thinking of a salad that is not too fattening and she doesn't have those problems. Good thing the lady in the dining room knew what she likes to eat because she always sees them together, so she serves everything the way she likes it. Sae comes over to bring the food to the table for him since she has a lot of practice at that because of her job. Junichi decides from now on to pay more attention to her tastes because he doesn't think it's fair that she knows him and he doesn't. So from now on he's going to write down every single thing she likes. Later they go to the temple as Sae wanted to make a wish but didn't want to tell the protagonist no matter how much he insists. It leaves an insecurity planted in his young heart. Over the weekend, while he was watching the videos he took of Sae, Mia comes in scared telling him that Sae was attending a marriage, so maybe her parents are forcing her to get married since they are rich. Then he runs to the hotel where it will take place and they look for her everywhere until they find her with another guy. He goes running to separate them but falls down. She is surprised that he is there and explains to him that it is the wedding of her puppies. Then he realizes that Mia misunderstood everything, so he apologizes as he thought she will get married and they will take her away from him. Sae is glad that her boyfriend has come from so far for her, but she promises him that it will never happen, and even the wish she made at the temple was that the two of them will always be together, so now their bond is even stronger than before. Back to school, Mia calls Junichi because she had a little problem. It turns out that she was elected as the president of the festival committee, so now she didn't know what to do. So he goes back into the role of a coach to teach her everything she has to do. This makes him more excited because he misses Sae calling him coach. Due to the fact that she has to learn how to do the job, now she doesn't spend too much time with the protagonist, so he starts to feel lonely, and Mia tells him that he should try to do his best just like her. He also thinks the same, so he comes up with a great idea. The next day, he goes earlier with Sae to propose to record a documentary with the progress of the preparation of the festival. She thinks it's an incredible idea because it also allows him to be closer to her, although she warns him not to be too distracted by recording and that he had a lot of pending tasks. After lunch, he goes running to the nurse's office because apparently Sae was there, so he was worried, but he was just resting for a while due to the lack of sleep. Then they calm down a little bit and go back to work as in their day-to-day life. The days go by and they continue with this dynamic, but there comes a moment when Sae starts to make mistakes because she has so much work to do, so he asks her for advice since he feels useless by her side for not being able to do anything. She tells him that she just needs him by her side because no matter how hard she tries to do everything alone, it is always good to have people you trust around you. Junichi realizes what he has to do, so he shows her all the things she has accomplished so far and leaves her confidence. He also tells her to ask him for anything she needs since he will always be there to help her. Sae tells him to keep filming her closely since this is all she needs to be able to continue. After this, the problems she had with the festival clubs are solved and she opens it normally. So again, the couples competition is held, and this time it is Miya with Ai who will participate. They don't think that two women going out is suitable for this contest, but they change their minds when they see that Umehara comes out with her daddy, with all the intentions of winning. Then the protagonist goes to congratulate her, and Sae gives him her Christmas present, so he feels bad since he has nothing for her. Then he tells her to ask him for something to give her, so she tells him she wants a kiss because they haven't done it for a long time. After many years, they both form a happy family, and Junichi didn't stop recording for posterity every moment they have lived as a happy couple they are. Days after the festival, Junichi had a date with Haruka, and as usual, everyone is amazed at how beautiful she is and how she has a boyfriend as normal as him. She had a request to him as he wanted him to meet her parents. Then she tells Hibiki and she is surprised at how straightforward she is. They continue talking and Haruka sees in a magazine the church where her grandparents were married, as she loves the story of their marriage. Her grandfather proposed to her grandmother just as she graduated from school. Hibiki then thinks that maybe that's why she showed him a wedding dress, but Haruka immediately denies because she will never dare to ask him for something like that. Junichi arrives and asks them what they were talking about, so Hibiki says they were talking about Haruka's cousin who looks just like her but with blonde hair. He is surprised to hear of a blonde Haruka. Haruka comes up with a great idea after talking about weddings and decides to make a simulation of the life they will have in the following years after their wedding. So they recreate the wedding with Hibiki as the priest, but skipping the kissing part because it will be too much for an exercise. Also, Hibiki surely wouldn't let them kiss in front of her. The main character knows that after the wedding comes the honeymoon, but obviously this was not going to be recreated, so they move on to the part where they find out that Haruka is pregnant. Hibiki plays the doctor and gives them the good news. It follows when they are a happy family and the most embarrassing roles falls to Hibiki, as she had to pretend to be the daughter of these two. She greets Junichi with a sweet voice and asks her daddy how they confess to her mommy. He gets very nervous, so he avoids the question. This upsets Haruka, so she doesn't speak to him on the way home. At that moment, Haruka's cousin Jessica appears and the protagonist is surprised to find out that they are indeed identical, except that Jessica was blonde. She tries to ask him if she's going to propose to Haruka. She gets upset, stops her, and then explains that she didn't mean to tell him that this is common in her family. Apparently, there are more things that Haruka hasn't told to the main character, and Jessica recommends her to tell him because she doesn't have much time left before her graduation. The next day, as usual, Junichi goes to greet Haruka, but she starts acting strange and distant, so he gets worried. Kaoru thinks that he has been rejected and spreads this rumor around the classroom. While telling Rihoko that this was not true, Jessica calls him at school and wishes him luck, so that he can beat all of Haruka's lovers because there are many people in England who love her. That worries the protagonist a lot, so before Haruka leaves, he takes her by the hand to the shed as he has to make it clear that he will not give up no matter how many Englishmen are in love with her. She laughs a lot as these boys loved her but when they were kids. She makes it clear to him that she only belongs to him nowadays, which embarrasses the protagonist a lot but makes him more confident. She had good memories of this shed, so she gets nostalgic. He tries to relive these memories, but the move doesn't work out for him, so he can't leak behind her knees again. After apologizing for getting jealous, he asks Haruka if she wants to go to his house. She is surprised but says yes. They take the opportunity to pretend they are a married couple and he comes home from work. To continue the game, Haruka starts cooking dinner and he asks her where her parents and Miya are. He tells her that no one is coming home today because they are all out. So Haruka takes this opportunity to sleep over. Junichi was in paradise because Haruka was going to cook for him and then they can do all kind of things that he had always imagined and never thought he would do. Although in the kitchen area there was still a little more work to do. Then they start to play a little, and Junichi doesn't stay quiet, forcing him to give up in the tickle battle. After that, she ends up sweating a lot, so she goes into the shower. He remembers that Haruka told him at the hotel that she likes to be spied on, so he gets up the courage to go in and watch for a little while, but Haruka finishes before he decides. She comes out wearing revealing pajamas, but he turns around to keep control. Haruka tells him that the pajamas were intended to be revealing. Then he excitedly turns around to delay himself, but she had already changed it because he took too long. Then they go to sleep, but Junichi couldn't do it, so they talk for a while, and Haruka confesses to him that she will go to England after her graduation because her grandparents have been asking her to do so for a long time. This makes him sad, but if he thinks about it, he realizes that Haruka's nostalgic attitude makes sense in that case. He goes to see Hibiki to ask her if she knew, and it turns out to be true because she had been telling her about it for a long time. Hibiki tells him that if he really loves her, he can't just stand by and do nothing. Then she asks him what he is willing to do for her. He runs to look for Haruka to try to convince her to stay by his side. As he can't find her at school, he calls her home, where Jessica answers and tells him that she won't pass him the phone because she doesn't want him to get in the way of Haruka's return to England. Although she won't interfere too much either because if he managed to convince her, she'll let Haruka do whatever she wants. He starts thinking about what he can do to stop Haruka from going to study at university in England. The next day, at the third year graduation, he comes out to give the farewell speech for the second year. At the beginning, it starts as a normal speech, but suddenly he changes and mentions how much he loves her and all the moments they have spent together. So he doesn't want her to go to England, and to show her all his love, he proposed to her in front of everyone. Haruka jumps with happiness and accepts without a second thought, so everyone celebrates Junichi's success. Even Jessica, who doesn't know where he got the idea that she was going to study in England, since her trip was only for a week. Anyway, she feels that putting a little pressure on the main character had its results. Days later, they celebrate the wedding and start their married life, in which they are very happy, as we already know. It was almost Christmas and Miya was happy because she was going to the hot springs since they were having an inauguration and so the girls could go in without paying anything. Junichi imagines how good Sae and I will look in the hot spring, and Miya tells him not to think dairy about them. He doesn't pay attention to her, and she gets even more upset. Then, when she meets up with her friends, she tells them how perverted her brother is. On the other hand, Haruka, Jessica, and Hibiki also went, and they are super excited because Haruka saw an old series where they wash their bags and wants to try it. Miya sees again how big Sae's breasts are, so she understands her brother a little bit. Then they hear a scream, so they run to see who is it, and it turns out to be Rihoko, who saw her weight. Kaoru and Ayatsuji were also there, only they had visited the famous bath that helps develop the body, and no matter how hot they die, they stay there to get big breasts. Haruka's group and Miya's group arrive at the hot spring where Kaoru and Ayatsuji were, and tell them that they shouldn't be there because they don't need the effects of the hot spring. Hibiki realizes what she means, so they take the others with them. On the other hand, Rihoko was at the food washer, which is famous for the fish that eat unnecessary parts of you. When she heard this, she goes into with the whole body to see if they eat enough to lose weight. Miya and I come out of the hot bath, and Ayatsuji with Kaoru are happy as not only they will get outstanding results as they are staying longer than anyone else. Meanwhile, Miya finds a super hot sauna that supposedly makes you younger, and here she runs into the tutor who says she didn't know it had that effect. But they can't talk much as it's too hot for Miya and she has to leave at once. Returning to Ayatsuji and Kaoru, they end up getting dizzy from spending too much time in the hot bath, so they have to go to rest. Then Rihoko is surprised they've been there for so long as Junichi comes out of this kind of bath very quickly. They are all surprised that she knows something so specific about the main character, but it's only because they are childhood friends and went to this kind of baths in primary school, which calmed the girls a bit as they were just kids. Back to Mia, she drinks some milk after all the heat and feels better. Then she sees a girl who looks a lot like the tutor and is surprised at the effects of the sauna, although it wasn't really her. Because of this, Mia takes some salts to supposedly correct you as a person and gives them to her brother as a gift. He takes the shower with these salts and comes out as a new person. So correct that he is even about to burn his and Omahara's magazines. But this is too much, so Mia regrets it and wants her brother to get back to normal before he does something crazy.